All right, so Buck, take us back before real estate, man. What were you doing? Who was Buck Hujabre?
Oh, well, who was he? I don't know if he ever found himself, but I'd love to go back and talk to that guy and tell him all sorts of fun things. I sort of came to real estate first, and then ended up in show business, and then ended up in real estate. So once upon a time, many moons ago, a lot of states had what was called a broker's apprentice that they would allow. Many states have done away with that now, and think of it like an internship program. So in high school, I was in show choir and marching band, and I played sports, which made it really hard, because it was either football or marching band. And we figured out a way to do both of those things, drum and bugle corps. But I was always geared towards the entrepreneurial. I always, I had a lemonade stand, legitimately. I had a lawn cutting service that I started when I was 8 years old. And I realized the concept of leverage really early because I was saving for a go-kart. And I knew that I had to mow X number of lawns to get $20 a lawn to be able to save enough to buy the go-kart. And there was no physical way that I could do that in the time frame that I wanted to. So I enlisted a bunch of my friends and I gave them $8 a piece when I was collecting $20 in revenue, and we could mow 5 lawns at the same time. And through doing that, we discovered that our charming show busy kids stuff led to the concept of leverage so I could buy the go-kart. We'll talk about that later on. I ended up going to school and becoming an actor for many years, did a bunch of Broadway musicals, a bunch of stuff on film and television, and it had a really high level of success in that world, but always wanted to get back to the business of business, so much so that I ran my acting career and my music career like a business, show business. It's actually in the name, right? I finally got to a point where I got tired of not having an incremental effect in showbiz. And again, I lived in New York City, lived in LA, performed on some of the coolest stages in the world, some of the coolest projects, met a bunch of celebrities. And I wanted to get back to business. And I was doing a show called Jersey Boys, a huge hit Broadway musical. That's what brought me to Las Vegas. And I was the only one in the building waiting for the day that the show closed so I could refocus my efforts into real estate. Keeping in mind that I was doing both of these things parallel for most of my career. I had a real estate practice, real estate business, real estate brokerage, and I was doing showbiz stuff. And so I was the idiot that would go do the show on stage from 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock every night. I'd come home and I'd run a business in the mornings. And it wasn't really until I got to the point where my kids were starting school that I realized that I would never see them at night because I was on stage when they were at home. And that was the deciding factor for me. And it came down to 2 real big things. I got tired of constantly having to start over with no incremental effect. And I really wanted to recreate my lawn mowing business from when I was 10 years old.
So say that first part, the first thing you just mentioned one more time, starting over with no incremental effect. Say that one more time. And just because you packed a lot in there, it was really good. I want to make sure that our listeners understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, so starting over with no incremental effect. Showbiz is a really, much like real estate, believe it or not, show business, the sports world, professional athletes, and real estate run parallel lanes. The difference is, for you two crazy people from the East Coast who probably love all things Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, this is going to be a direct dig at you. The Super Bowl that you win, the first down that you get, placing first in the NFC, AFC, whatever it is, there's an incremental effect there that the next season you have something to build on, right? In real estate, the more closings you have, the bigger you build your brand, the bigger you build your brokerage. There's an incremental and perpetual effect there. In showbiz, you're really only as good as the project is out there. And when the project closes, when the show stops shooting or the Broadway show closes or there's no more performances of that particular project to give, you're literally back in the audition line. Now I hear what the objection is to this. Well, that's the same thing when you have a close of escrow or the same thing when you lose a game. The incremental effect here is that it doesn't matter that you were starring on Broadway last night. Chances are that you're going to have to go to a cater waitering job or waiting tables the day after your big project closes, and there's no real what I call the hockey stick of incremental growth in that business until you break through to the level where you're on a first call, no audition list only. And I just got tired of it where, I had so many people, so many friends, myself included, that would star in a huge hit show, making more money than we knew what to do with on a Tuesday. And then by the time Wednesday rolled around, it was back to the audition line out in the cold with 1,000 other people who look like you, talk like you, walk like you, and have probably equal to or more talent than you'll ever have.
Well, and isn't that like, okay, I hear so many of my experienced agents say something to the effect of, I've had 20 first years in real estate, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it sounds like you're getting at. And, and a lot of real estate agents don't approach their business sequentially like that hockey stick that you say. So, okay. So you do the showbiz thing. You want to get back to the lawn mowing business that you had when you were 10. What happens next?
So when I got to Vegas, I was touring with Jersey Boys at a time when the world had ended. And remember, the real estate mind was always there. I'd had a practice. I built it. I understood how the real estate world worked very, very well. Had several investments, and I'm a commercial practitioner primarily. The world ends. Jersey Boys is the biggest hit show in the world. I'm touring with that at the time. First national tour. We're sitting in every city for really long periods of time. LA for 6 weeks, Toronto for 4 months. And then a fascinating thing happens. The economy crashes. And as luck would have it, our show is routed right through the heart of the hardest hit parts of America: Cleveland, Ohio, Detroit, Michigan, Buffalo, New York. And the real estate guy in me, performing a fun story at night, is looking around going, I'll have one here, I'll have one here, and I'll have one here. Realizing that if I start buying property in each of these markets, I potentially have housing for the actors and musicians that tour through these cities, and I'm buying them at a price that would never be achievable ever again in any of our lifetimes because the market has absolutely collapsed. Man, this is fun. I want more of this. I end up in Las Vegas when we get pregnant with our second child. I tell the producers I can't stay on tour anymore. I can tour with one, but I can't tour with two. I need to go back to New York. And they say, well, how about Vegas? And I'm like, that's the right answer because it's the hardest hit market on the planet. And I'm aspiring to fire up my business in that place again. And what better market to do it in where it's shooting fish in a barrel? So I wanted to build an incremental plan. And my desire has always been to take what I have learned so that you all can skip ahead of me in line. That's the honest to God truth. I wish somebody had grabbed me by the nape of the neck when I was a kid starting out and going, let me show you all the things not to do when building a real estate business. And that's kind of how we ended up back there. And I literally took my lawnmower model. I had 10 friends who all wanted to make $8 a yard so that they could go buy a large pizza from Domino's or Milano's Pizza or wherever it was. And I got to make a $12 profit center and never had to be there in the first place. And I said, we just replaced lawns. The profit now has 2 zeros in it instead of no zeros in it. And I never had to be there in the first place.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Like, you obviously were, it's almost like you were born with this entrepreneurial mindset. Do you feel like that's true, that you were born with it? Or is this something that was developed at a super young age? Because I even look at when you were in show business and I hear the business side of you coming out and saying, I want that geometric growth. I want something that I can build over time and to help slingshot people in front of line. So like, is that something that you've always had in you or developed over time?
So it's funny. My family is originally from Afghanistan, which when I was growing up, nobody knew where the heck that was other than it was a lyric in a Billy Joel song. Ayatollahs in Iran, Russians in Afghanistan, which was really cool. All the Afghans around the world were like, woohoo, Billy Joel, who is he? And it was also the setting for Rambo 3. Other than that, nobody really knew where the hell Afghanistan was, right? So, but what's fascinating about this whole story, at the risk of sounding like a Middle Eastern guy is about to hijack your podcast, which is a terrible thing for me to say now that it's come out of my mouth.
That is terrible.
It's awful. I apologize to anyone I've offended. We invented the concept of what is known as a bazaar. The word in our mother tongue is bazaar, which means to shop or to trade. Our people were the merchants. Like I'm talking like 5,000 years prior to Christ, right? That's how far back this goes. We were the original merchants. We were the original Silk Road. We were the original traders. And the word bazaar became bazaar, right? Grand bazaar, what have you, which means a place to broker trades. So at the risk of sounding like hoity-toity, ethereal, spirit of the universe-y stuff, it's in my DNA and there's no two ways about it. One way or another, I was built to broker trades. And I like to think that the trades that I broker are on intellectual property through development of talent.
So then let me ask a quick follow-up question, because being in show business, I'm curious to know where, if any, there's overlap between performing on stage and performing as a professional real estate, agent, business owner, and now team leader, CEO.
Yeah. So what's interesting is so many people that I meet in the business, fellow team leaders, OPs, broker owners, they're like, oh, well, you were born for this because I can't tell when you're being a BS artist because you were an actor and you probably do that real well. And I say, look, here's the deal. The greatest actors in the world tell the greatest truths. You have to, one of the things as training as an actor, when you're learning to be an actor, is to shed all of the preconceived notions. Sounds like a bold law for those of you Keller Williams people listening to this. Shed all the preconceived notions so you can be a box, an empty shell, and be able to fill that with truth and honesty. And that's why some of the most moving performances throughout cinematic film or stage history, the ones that people are left talking about, are coming from the most honest place in the world, which makes me really dangerous in real estate because it allows me to not pull punches. Because when I tell you, this is how I feel, this is what I think, this is what we should do, it's coming from that acting training. To your point, Joe, it's coming from that acting training of, I can't get to the finish line if I put upon airs. I cannot sell you anything if there is one iota of dishonesty or lack of integrity or merit in what I'm about to tell you. The greatest training I got as an actor has served me more as a business owner than in any other capacity in my life.
That's super insightful and super neat. We need to develop a whole group of courses, I think, on Jersey Boys meets real estate, and we'll do that in the future. Okay, so I'm super curious when did you start then to pull away from acting and Broadway and all of those things altogether and really focus all your attention in real estate?
See, so that's what's fascinating, right? Like people ask me this, I kept reading the one thing because I was like, well, I'm doing two things and they're both ridiculously lucrative. My focus to the real estate side I should say back to the real estate side, right? Because when I was performing or when I was auditioning, I had the best part-time job in the world or survival job in the world in brokering real estate trades. For me, the light bulb sort of went off about my effectiveness. And by effectiveness, I mean in the community. I can only do more by having a platform. At the risk of sounding political, please don't take it this way. One of the things that has driven me nuts is when people are making a political stand or making some sort of statement in a public thing, and they're like, just shut up and throw the ball, or just shut up and play, or just shut up and I say the opposite of that is true. We are all looking for a platform in which we can get the biggest audience. Whether you agree with what the platform is or not is irrelevant. And I thought my biggest platform is going to ironically be through showbiz to educate people about their financial futures and ending poverty through the cycle of real estate. And so I started to pull away from showbiz and call it 2013, 2014, but not fully, realizing that I wanted to build something bigger than I could get in showbiz. And a funny thing happened. The minute that I start letting the industry know that I'm no longer going to be in it, I started getting the biggest parts of my life. The moral of the story here is I should have threatened to retire 15 years ago, and I would have 2 Academy Awards, a Tony Award, and an Oscar. And so that
always retire.
Yeah, so I'm going to say I'm going to retire from real estate today, and I'm going to land my biggest agents and deals. So that started in 2012, 2013, and we started to progressively build towards an exit plan so that there would be a seamless transition since the business already existed.
So you mentioned about commercial sort of being your focus. When you made this transition 2012, 13, 14, were you still focused in on commercial at that time, or did that evolve over time?
No, so I started at the very, very beginning. When I got my first license, I started as a commercial guy. I found it sexier for a couple of different reasons. There is zero emotion when it comes to commercial real estate. It's about the product, it's about the owner user, and it's about the income. But a funny thing happens with that, right? When you're in commercial and you do a really good job, they want to start referring you, because they're typically high net worth individuals, their residential business. And I was with a different firm at the time that was a commercial only firm. When I got to Vegas, everybody and their mother has a referral in Sin City for a residential property. So I affiliated with KW at that time because it had a robust luxury platform for my high net worth individuals who were buying commercial property, and built it from there. It's still my first love. I still have a team, a commercial team this year that will produce about 100 million in net leased institutional volume sales. We're on pace to do 135 million that we know about next year. And we've built a specialized practice with adult use licenses that is in the cannabis space, that is in the pharmaceutical space. And because we are in Vegas, there are some adult cabaret type uses as part of that practice. Do with that what you will. Dear listener, do not judge, because it's a fantastically lucrative business to be in. But my true love is in the office and industrial net leased hedge fund facing sales.
Okay, so you're still running your. You're still running your commercial business, and as we mentioned, your sort of primary role and responsibility now is CEO and team leader of your local brokerage. Tell us a little bit about what attracted you to that position, and sort of what some of the biggest opportunities to learn and to grow have been as a result.
So that's a great question. I went back to my lawnmower model. I want to be able to do more while not having to be there. And the only way I can do that is through the people that I affiliate with. I tend to gravitate towards people that are way, way smarter than I am, because I want to feel stupid at every opportunity. It's the only way I've learned about myself to grow. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong damn room. And the only way I could do that was by being in a leadership position where I got to mastermind and hear the struggles of those that are currently in the trenches, so that I can see what the challenges are, learn from those challenges, and potentially create an implementation process that makes their life that much easier. Here's the fun part of all of this. I'm really proud to say that I have just graduated my 12th bona fide millionaire real estate agent since I've been a team leader, 12 of them.
Congratulations, that's huge.
Thank you. This is a very big deal for me, because when I first took the role over, I asked how many team leaders had graduated, people like that, and I got blank stares. And I got really frustrated. I said, well, if we're building to this, who's the person that coached him through it? Because I want to be in the room with that person. And I couldn't get a straight answer. I mean, to be totally transparent, it's a very difficult role that we are in as team leaders. There's a very high burnout cycle because you're dealing with a lot of big egos, a lot of big personalities. And that's the number one reason why I was attracted to it. I was in showbiz. I was around some of the biggest egos on the planet, and I always befriended them and made sure that we saw eye to eye. What better way to translate that into the business world, the real estate business world, where you can go, hey man, it's bigger than you are, and let me show you how you can divide and conquer. I happen to have a unique perspective on doing that. Let me show you my lawnmower model.
I love your ability to relate all of these things all the way back to that. And I mean, that's your ability to tell a story, right? And to weave that story into what's going to benefit these mega agents, these mega egos. Being someone who shares that type of role with you, Buck, the way that you just position that is eye-opening to me in some different ways. So thank you. So I want to ask you this question though, because one of the reasons you stepped more away from showbiz was you mentioned the one thing. So now you're running both your team, right? And you're running a brokerage. That's two things, two distinct roles and responsibilities, and yet you're having massive success at both. What is it that's enabled you to do that? What are the principles that you've been learning from those smarter in the room from you that has enabled you to unleash yourself in those two different directions and see really big results?
Yeah, so here's it's really not difficult. Once I figured out, I've always been obsessed with the concept of time, mastering time. It's the one thing we can all go out there and make more money and drive nicer cars, be more charitable in our communities. We can have nicer suits. We can get better haircuts like you guys have. I'm still waiting to earn enough money to have the haircuts that you guys have. But the one thing we can't get more of, no matter how wealthy we get, is time. Obsessed with time. That's the one thing we can't buy more of, right? So I thought, how do we effectively do something where you're in 10 places at once? And it's a photocopier. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's a photocopier. When you buy a McDonald's franchise, or when you buy a Ford or Chevrolet or whatever franchise, they literally hand you a playbook and say, here's how I did it. If you do exactly these things and you do not vary, this is where Keller Williams is different, right? Creativity and models. We want you to be creative inside of the model. Those companies don't. This is literally the photocopy of the playbook that every other person who's made several million, several $100 million a year does. So when I was transitioning out of this role, I literally went to the person that I was going to have take over my commercial and luxury practices and said, you do not deviate from the form. This is it. For those of you that served in the military, you do not break formation. This is it. If you do, you will die. And I made it life and death stakes for them. You will crash this thing into the ground because I'm focusing on something else over here and I need this to continue going. I spent 41 hours this year. I just tallied it because I'm doing my year end. I spent 41 hours over the course of this year to close 100 million in commercial real estate business.
Wow. That's a pretty good hourly wage.
It really is. It really is. Right now, I'm not making 100 million in commissions. So that's sales volume. But the idea is when you find the person and tell them, I don't want to use the word shackle, but I want you to only do this. Question it if there's an issue to question it with, but you are literally going to be a photocopier and replicate this thing 100 times next year. and it's cruise control, which allows me to then go focus on the tasks as a team leader to grow the market center.
Buck, you mentioned what Keller Williams teaches is really building a really strong foundation on proven systems and then allowing yourself to be creative after the fact. Do you see that as being a problem that a lot of the real estate agents and high producers that you work with have, is that they get too creative before having the really strong foundation? And what are some of the conversations and questions that you would ask to kind of get them back on track?
Oh man, do I love that you just asked this. So 2 years ago, I was jokingly called by the then regional director, Jesse Herfel, the mega whisperer, because we had a really great run of recruiting 90 million in production volume in the span of 41 days because of what you just said, Joe. And the thing was, I held a boot camp for them. I said, if you are producing $20 to $30 million a year somewhere else, this is not an attempt to recruit you. I want to do a pre-mortem on your business, not a post-mortem. I want to do a pre-mortem and find out where your gaps are. I'm not going to tell you anything that you should or shouldn't be doing. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to take away and tell people not to do based on what I see. And that way it takes the defensiveness away. They're like, well, why won't you give it to me? Well, no, I see the gaps in your business. I see all the gaps in your business, but we're not here for me to improve your life unless you invite me to. I want to make a best practices that I can give to everybody else behind you. And a fascinating thing happens. Their ego vanishes because it comes from a very scientific place. I am studying 10 mega agents in the real world. I have a control group, and that control group is called the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. It's quite good. And the test group, scientific method, is all of you out there practicing. And here's where you've deviated from the form. And I'm going to find what works, what doesn't work. And then I'm going to give that to everybody who wants to listen. Egos are gone. They plug in and they go, well, if I'm good enough to study, I should be good enough to improve.
I feel like I'm getting a front row seat in being a better consultant on these conversations. So thank you very much for that. I mean, just like the art of eliminating ego is, I mean, that alone, I mean, we could spend hours and hours talking about that, because I mean, how many agents have we seen just shipwreck their business because of ego? I think about, you know, I was having a conversation with our business partner, Kristen Cole, and she said, David, I've seen it time and time again. Big egos are more willing to burn with the ship than just catch the life raft, right? And so if we can get better and better as consultants at helping people control their ego and get that out of the equation, I think we save more businesses, you know, across the board. That gets me excited. So I really love what you're talking about.
Well, I love the thought too, because remember, at the end of the day, everything we do is transactional. Everything in the world that we had, I hate to make that sound as unromantic as it is, but when you propose to your spouse, that is transactional. I am naming the price and you will name the terms. Will you marry me? This is the price. What are the terms under which you will marry me? Right? Do I give you flowers, chocolates, promises I don't intend to keep? It's transactional, right? I need to shop for a new car. I'm going to go and say, I am offering you this for the car. Will you sell me the automobile? Under which terms? Life is transactional. There is no space for ego when everything in life is transactional. I love you. Do you love me? That is a transactional conversation. There is consideration. And I know this sounds really unromantic, but there is consideration and there is value. And once we realize that that's what it comes down to, nothing else matters.
So I'm curious to tie that concept into what you do as a leader in your brokerage. Mark Wiley is an agent that we had on the podcast just a few weeks ago, and he mentioned, you know, your name came up during the conversation. I know that you've been working with him over the last several years, and his business has just grown immensely over the last couple of years. Talk to us a little bit about that dynamic of like how you parcel your time with all of your agents, because you have a lot of people that you're working with, and how what that dynamic looks like as far as how you're able to give different groups of people your time and attention.
So yeah, it's difficult. It's certainly not easy, but it's prioritized. So they get my top 20%, it's intimate. I know everything about them and they know everything about me. I tell them that real estate, especially coaching through leadership, we need to be dating. This is how it should feel. If you don't get butterflies when the reminder goes off that I'm meeting with Buck, and I don't get butterflies that I'm meeting with David and Joe when it goes off, we're in the wrong relationship, and that's okay. We can see other people, right? That's at the end of the day, let's cut the fat. I'm lucky enough. If I'm lucky, I'm going to get 90 passes around the sun. I have no time to waste, right? So you have an invitation that if I stop giving you butterflies, and likewise, if you stop giving me butterflies before we meet, we need to part ways and remain friends. I don't care where you end up. I'd love to keep you here. Let's rekindle the spark. If that doesn't work, let's not waste each other's time. So that's rule number one. They get 20 focused minutes a month if they have earned the right to be in my top 20%, and the clock starts running the minute that they set foot in the door. The night before, if I do not have an updated set of their goals and their systems through a 411 and a GPS, for those of you listening to this that are not with Keller Williams, that's a metric that we use to track and set goals. If I don't have that 24 hours prior to the meeting is automatically canceled because I have no way of effectively leading you through whatever you are being challenged with. After 3 cancellations, even if you remain in the top 20%, you are no longer invited to the private time. If you don't have a standard that you stick to, you have none at all. They understand that it's hyper-focused. And the beauty of that is every agent has the same problem. They just have a different version of that problem or challenge. It really comes down to everyone is struggling with the same thing. It's where and how they're struggling with it. Once I've had those 20% meetings and those 20-minute meetings with the 20%, you gauge through your team, you gauge, okay, well, David is having very similar challenges to Joe. I should send them to lunch. Because while David is talking about why does my hair part better to the right, and Joe says, why does my hair part better to the left, they actually are using the same gel product. So maybe they can mastermind about what side to part their hair on better because they have the gel product in common. Right? That's where the what I call the execution of exponential growth happens, because while I've planted the seed and while I've learned about the agent and their struggles, I'm able to then hand them to someone who's having similar struggles, and they'll have a way deeper, way more intimate conversation than they will ever have with me as their team leader. And that creates stickiness. And then they get a desire to go out and teach that in the community. And you don't think that conversation doesn't come up on the other side of a transaction? Oh, wow, where did you learn that? From this really cool agent in my brokerage that taught me how to do it. My team leader suggested that they get together. Oh, your team leader did that. Yeah, team leader didn't teach me. He put me in front of somebody who could. Why don't you come talk to Buck about joining our brokerage?
So it becomes less about the actual expertise that you do or don't have, and more about your effectiveness at connection and connectedness. I am working from home. I have a little one in the background. That's what you just heard there. But I love that. And also, Buck, for the record, that was your best hair analogy you've ever done.
That's pretty good, David, huh? All right, Buck, so we're coming into 2022. Talk to us about what the big vision is as we move forward into the new year for both your business and your brokerage.
Yeah, so in the business, it's, you'd have to be under a rock to not see where the real estate market is headed, both in terms of growth of valuation and consolidation of industry. The industry is going to consolidate. And I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see a significant consolidation of the verticals within our business and the role that the agent plays within those verticals. And it would be asinine of us to not think about what is the exit strategy. When I say exit strategy, that doesn't necessarily mean your retirement or sailing off into the sunset. It's the idea of how are you going to position yourself to exit a transition in the market most effectively? And the answer to that is education. So the big one word for me for 2022 is educating the people outside of the industry. Education, that's it. The public has no business negotiating directly with Wall Street. Wall Street and Main Street should be kept separate at all costs because there's a distinct disadvantage, and people's net worth disappears when Main Street and Wall Street are allowed to negotiate together. I'm not allowed to say their name publicly because they are now officially a brokerage that's been in the news a lot and they're in trouble, but I will say the A in their name stands for accurate. I'll let you figure that one out. So education of the public as to why the agent is central and important costs the client nothing because of the value that they provide. That's the big thing for 2022 from the brokerage level. Personally, I've got about 5 things on my list of mastery that I'm working on. And those things are important to me because unless I master those, I can't help those that depend on me master those things. And I can only have what I want when I help them get what they want. And until I'm good enough to earn their respect and their ability to grow beyond where they are today, I can't have what I want in the future.
So before you jump into, I want to hear what those 5 areas are, but before you do that, I want to hear about your strategy for actually educating. Okay. What does that actually look like? Are you going out into the public arena? Are you going into colleges? What does it look like educating the public?
So it's not me, it's the great and powerful Oz, and the agents in our top 20% will be given the man behind the curtain here told me I should be talking to you about this. It's far easier to cover the masses if 400 plus agents from the market center are hosting micro events inside their own communities about whatever topic we decide to do each quarter. Why is a mortgage important? What are the tax advantages of investment property? What does it look like when a hedge fund is guiding you to the biggest important and most pertinent financial decision in your life versus a human being? An algorithm cannot sit in a kitchen after the death of a parent and counsel grieving children through what the disposition of that property needs to look like. A human being can do that. An algorithm cannot counsel a divorcing couple over how to split the marital estate. A human being can. And chances are I can find you a human being who has been in that situation personally that actually has a real estate license and can speak to you from a position of experience and authority. Show me a computer program that can do that for you. And that's where we hit them where it hurts. Our industry is under siege for all the wrong reasons. I want a pizza to arrive in 30 minutes. I don't want my escrow to close in 30 minutes. Very different commodities. And we need to educate the community better. We need to educate the public better. And the only way they do that is by making our agents better at communicating the message that those of us that can see it through the eyes and lens of experience can.
So you're equipping your agents to then go out and, for lack of a better word, be the evangelist to their community regarding these specific topics.
That's right.
All right.
Exactly right.
So Buck, now bring us back to those. You mentioned 5 areas of personal growth that you're going to be focused on in 2022. If you don't mind sharing, we'd love to hear.
Yep. Communication is number one. Now, communication is a really interesting one because everybody can always be better at communication. When I say communication, I mean, if I can do it in 2 words, I want to do it in 1. If I can do it in 3 paragraphs, I want to do it in 3 sentences. Effectiveness of clear, concise communication, right? The second one is in terms of personal development, of talent development. I want to get much, much better at being able to spot the gaps in someone's business and life before they even know they've come. I want to become the Apple computer of the intellectual property world. What do I mean by that? Apple invents a product and you want it before you even realized you needed it. They're very, very good at seeing the future. And I want to get that way with the human to human contact. The third one is educating the end of generational poverty. Finding out where the biggest gaps are in the groups of people that get trapped in the poverty cycle and being able to communicate that more effectively through people that have come from that cycle into the places that they are today. The fourth one is, and this is going to be one that's on my list forever, even if I do master it, is being a better partner, parent, and person. The 3 Ps. Partner, parent, and person. And by partner, that's with my wife, who's incredibly hot, British, and speaks with a funny accent. A better partner to my business partners, and a better partner to the 400 plus agents that I am privileged enough to be in business with. And then the 5th one, while I don't have any lack of enthusiasm on a daily basis, is to make sure that I carry my enthusiasm. I give everything that needs a 5-minute funeral, it's 5-minute funeral, so that I can move on and be enthusiastic about the good and the bad. When I was doing Jersey Boys, there was a line in the show that said, "Ada passa nutata." It's an Italian phrase that means the good passes, right? This too shall pass. The good passes, but also the bad. I want to make sure that I honor that so that I can experience the lowest of lows and highest of highs and move on.
You mentioned this 5-minute funeral. I'm sure most of our listeners know what that is, but I just love to hear it from your own mouth, Buck, because we all know how important mindset is. And so just describe to us what this 5-minute funeral is and how it's been able to help you make faster progress in your business.
Yeah, so I'm not unlike many people out there. When something bad happens, I'm not one of those people that can go, okay, moving on. No, I have to go through it so that I can honor it. I can experience it. I can say, I'm giving this the energy it deserves now, and then extinguish it and starve it of oxygen by saying, I've done it. It's over with. I'm going to feel bad about it. I'm going to have the emotional roller coaster. Let's go on. That comes from the acting world. We draw on a lot of emotional memory from the past to be able to play an honestly emotional moment in the moment that we're in. And I say, look, my escrow fell out today, and it was a $30 million deal. And while I'm not supposed to be tied to the outcome, doggone it, I became tied to the outcome because I already picked the Porsche I was going to buy with the commission check, right? Or the vacation I was going to go on, right? Or the charity I was going to donate to. I need to go through this. This really sucks. Oh my God, I hate life right now. Why did I get into real estate? What was I thinking? I could have been a dentist. And I give it all that whole gamut of experience. I go through the whole thing. I make it a point. My assistant laughed the other day because I literally grabbed a pillow in my office and screamed into it because I was like, okay, and then it's done. It's over with. I've instead of taking 1 day worth of emotion, we forced it to happen in 5 minutes, moving on.
Well, I think that's such a valuable lesson because I think sometimes all of us by human nature can get that thing and pour extra negative energy into it and dwell on it and live in it for longer than we need to. And obviously when we're in that state of mind, we're not very resourceful. We're not very productive. And so I love what you're saying about experience the emotion. Don't try to cram it down and pretend it's not there. Experience it fully and then allow yourself to move on quickly.
Well, my greatest creative moments, and I know that there are some MAPS coaches out there right now, so I'm getting ready to duck from the bullets that they're about to fire at me. The greatest creative moments I've had have come from my personal tragedy and trauma. So when something like that escrow falling out, right? So when people always say to me, oh, just be happy and move on. Absolutely not. Like, I don't ascribe to that because I have had some of my most absolutely creative moments in the midst of my greatest tragedy. Oh my God, this mega agent decided that they're not going to join us. My life sucks. I've wasted 6 months of my life. I've spent money taking them to dinner. Oh, you know what I could do next time? I could make that part of the deal memo. That in the event that they join us, I will reimburse them for, like, literally my most creative moments have come from the 5-minute funerals. Don't discount that.
I love that. It also, I mean, we're talking so much about theater and storytelling and all this stuff from your life, Buck. I mean, think about every epic tale there is. It's always out of the trial that the triumph comes, right?
That's exactly right.
And so I think there's a real human rawness that like connects there. So I totally ascribe to what you're saying there, man. We could go on a lot and we're definitely going to have to make this probably a regular comeback to type interview. I want to transition us though into the last segment of our show for sake of time. It's 3, 2, 1 action. It's the same 3 questions we ask every guest. You ready to be in the hot seat? You like being in the hot seat. So
I love being in the hot seat. That's right. Yeah.
Are you walking on your treadmill today?
I've got it turned off because I didn't want the sound, but yes, I want.
So we'll call it the hot treadmill. All right. Question number 1, Joe.
All right, Buck, who's the one person that's had the biggest influence on your business and why?
My parents, because they taught me the idea of, you said one person, so I'll say my dad, but my mom's a close second, or equal rather, not close second, she's equal, because they taught me the value of integrity outlasts any action that you do. And if you don't feel good about it, nobody else will eventually.
Well, and they also gave you that great story about Bazaar. So
they sure did.
You wouldn't have them. So Question number 2, what is the single most influential book on your business and why?
Oh, I love this. So right now, the single most influential book that I have, I've got a new one and I just reread it again and it's Human Plus Machine. I don't know if you've read it, but it's what the idea here is that it's the modern economy that we're in. Humans and machines are designed to work together. Machines are designed, or technology or AI is designed to enable more human contact. So don't let the machine replace the human, let the machine augment the human. So let's all go be cyborgs.
All right. Well, question number 3, as you know, Buck, this is the All In Podcast where we encourage our listeners to take what they've heard here today and to apply it to their lives and businesses and then to go implement. So what is the one action item you would suggest to our listeners to go move the needle forward in their business?
The greatest thing you can do is use my favorite script in life and in real estate. And I hate scripts, says the guy who used to be an actor and have to memorize them. I hate scripts because you can tell when somebody's being scripted. I want you to call everybody that you know, and I want you to ask them this question. Can you help me? I'm going to say that again for the people at home who didn't have a chance to write it down. I know it's long-winded and difficult. Can you help me? And then you pick something that you need to be helped with, because then it gives you the permission to ask them to help them. I need a great referral for a plumber. I need a great referral for an estate attorney. Who do you like that changes tires on cars? Where are the best tacos in Arizona? Where can I find a place to fly a kite with my children? Can you help me with? There's not a person on the planet that doesn't want to rescue a damsel in distress. And I want you to be the damsel in distress because that's the beginning of any relationship. I used to use it as my number 1 pickup line in my single days. I'd walk up and say, can you help me? And then some variety of cheesy pickup line that worked 70% of the time. It worked every time. Anchorman reference. Can you help me? I seem to have lost your number. I didn't give it to you. Oh, I guess you must then, right? Can you help me? I was looking for the handsomest guy in the room and I thought you might think it's me. Can you help me? I need to sell 15 more pieces of property this year because I'm in a competition with myself. Can you help me? My tire is flat and I need a really great referral. That will change your life and move the needle. Get into relationship, get into conversation, change other people's lives.
I'm taking rigorous notes with these pickup lines over here, by the way.
I was going to say, can you help me? Most epic 4-word script that I think I've ever heard. I love that. And actually, it's funny because, Joe and I are originally from the East Coast out in Maine, and in any state, I mean, I believe what you said translates to all humans to some degree, but especially in states where there's like a rugged individualism. I used to tell people all the time, not just in business, but like Mainers, which is what we call people in Maine, right?
Yeah.
If you ask if you can help them first, it's no. But they're the most kind, giving people if you ask for help.
Yeah.
And so I used to say, like, people would say, well, I don't know my neighbors. Go ask them for help with something. You'll get into a relationship with them. Yeah. And so even from my cultural background, I absolutely love that script because I think it is another one of those human things that just works because it's true.
It's a connection. Yeah. And learn how to say it in 3 different languages. That's my challenge to you. I speak 7 languages fluently. It served me well. Learn how to say, can you help me in 3 different languages or 3 different dialects of 3 different languages, and you will make more money and more connections and be able to give back more in your community than you will know what to do with.
Well, we might have to add that to our area of mastery. Maybe we'll put together a guide for Can You Help Me in 47 different languages, something like that. We'll add it to the show notes. So, Buck, I know people love this conversation, from agents, brokerage leaders, coaches, whatever. There's wisdom and insight for each and every one of these audiences, and they're going to want to find you. Where's the best place for them to connect with you?
That was actually the website address right there that the child gave. So if you just slow that down, it should say, look, I'm on Facebook. You can find me there. If you wanted to email me, you could do so at BHUJABRE. That's BHUJ Alpha Bravo ABRE at KW.com, or you can always drop me a note at 702-350-4179. Happy to talk to you. Really excited to have the opportunity to be a part of anybody's journey and success, because I want to be able to tell the story of I knew you when.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Buck. Thank you, listeners, for spending some time with us and for putting up with real life happening in the background in my world. Take it out there, kid. Guys, this has been another episode of the All In Podcast. As always,
hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the All In Podcast. We want to invite you to find all of today's resources from our show page at aipodcast.co. We also ask that you take just 1 minute to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. This is how we grow and how we're able to bring you the best content each and every week. Now go play All In.